Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Circle Up DMS. This is Kimberly Archibald, and we are broadcasting from dual offices in Paramus, New Jersey. And of course, we've got folks from our Clearwater headquarters. So we're super excited. We have a very highly anticipated, much discussed and talked about presentation today for this incredible effort that's being rolled out called DMS Engage. And so let's go to the next slide to introduce our speakers today. And I'll be brief because I want to really allow them to have the time to have a discussion. So we've got Matt Goodman, our Chief Information Officer, and Jonathan Katz, our Chief Technology Officer. And they're going to walk us through Engage and the vision behind it, what it means for our business, and what's next. So I will let them take over.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for taking a little time out of your lunch break to kind of listen into some things that Matt and I want to share with you, some very transformational opportunities. It seems like only yesterday that we were all in Clearwater, actually, at the retreat, kind of hearing for Engage for the very first time and kind of taking the screen back on what we anticipated for the organization. We've made a tremendous amount of progress in the past couple of months, and in fact, I'm happy to say that just this past couple of days, Matt and I, for the very first time, actually went on the road together, went up to Philadelphia, and actually really gave the Philadelphia crew, from a sales and operational standpoint, a real first-hand view of Engage, our platform for the organization. I want to talk a little bit about, for the organization, kind of what's coming down the pipe on Engage, when it's coming out, when you can kind of sense when you're going to start to see it on your computer, essentially, when you're going to be able to use it and leverage it to help the company grow at the leaps and bounds we all expect the company to grow at. And also to understand from a, let's say, a pragmatic standpoint, how you as an individual and as a part of a team, as a part of the overall organization, are going to become a user and understand what engages to you and your function in the organization. So one of the things that we are developing right now is something called an Engage series. So we are going to be coming out at least, probably at this point, at least once a month to twice a month with a series where we'll be coming out with quick lunchtime learnings. They kind of really focus on the various angles of Engage for all areas of the organization, so that obviously the company itself can essentially enhance and create a real sense of literacy around the platform itself, and really understand from a revenue standpoint how Engage touches every part of your job in the company. So Matt and I today, we have a little bit of a limited time of about, I think we have about 15, 20 minutes to kind of go through some things, and to kind of put it in perspective, this is why I'm talking a little bit quicker today, is we spent over 2 hours in Philadelphia giving a first glimpse of Engage to the team there. So I do expect us to be out with you a lot more in the coming weeks and months ahead, and getting you more acclimated with the platform itself. You may recall some time ago back at the retreat, why Engage? Why was the company making such substantial investments in Engage? And there are obviously there's a number of reasons why we made this investment. But more importantly, one of the things that always stands out to the executive team and to all areas of the business is our speed to revenue, our ability to understand data and analytics, really understanding our customer, and more importantly, enabling the organization to be agile and have efficiency at creating opportunities for our clients, and as well as for the company itself. So Matt and I today are going to kind of give you, let's say in broad strokes, your first kind of, let's say, look at Engage. We're actually going to log you into Engage. We're going to let you kind of see where Engage what it looks like today. And over the coming couple of weeks, as I said, we will be out with the organization, giving everyone a real detailed kind of understanding of a look under the hood, per se, of what it means to you. So Matt, if you could kind of move forward. So the company, as you know, or you don't know, but you may recall me talking about this at the retreat. On any given day, this company ingests well over 1 million pieces of data every day. And that's a lot of data. And that data means different things to different people. It may mean somebody who's looking for a refinance on a mortgage. It may be somebody looking for health insurance. It may be for somebody looking for an educational opportunity or a change of career. The challenge in our world is we have so many different types of data that we've had to come to a point where we can normalize data and give the organization a single view of what data means, and have the organization speaking essentially from one dictionary per se, or from one set of language as to what data means to the organization. So normalizing data is a very critical punchline for what Engage is. Obviously, at the same time, when you have so many users coming into the system every day, the sheer number of consumers where we can build different segments and different audiences and provide post-transactional opportunities, better targeting opportunities, better monetization, and obviously more efficient media buying across all areas of the business. That's what building audiences really does in the Engage platform. And more importantly, a single point of access. Today, as we all know, if you want something, I mean, I don't want to beat it up, but you typically hashtag call Matt. We're obviously retiring Matt at some point. And the more important part is the organization has to be enabled with one single point of access to see data, to manage data, and obviously to effectuate different opportunities in consumer life cycles across all varieties of all of our products. So now if you can move ahead. So I'm going to kind of put Matt on the spot here in a quick second here to kind of talk a little bit more in detail about the platform itself. But what I want to talk about right now is the Engage platform in, let's say, big building blocks. Because sometimes when you see Engage, you're like, what's this big thing? And it is really, really big. If I had to ask Matt how many lines of code the platform has, it would probably be in the 7-8 figure range probably by now at this point. That being said, when we think about it, we want to kind of simplify the way we look at it, right? So when we look at box number 1, audience intelligence, it's really what the core LMS platform, the core Engage platform is all about. It's really where we store data. It's really where we create so many monetization opportunities. It's where we manage costs, revenue, measure KPIs, measure performance of our owned and owned properties as users flow through various properties on any given day of the week. That's the core. That's what we kind of call box 1. It's kind of what we call core. Product number 2 is our studio product. And our studio product is a really interesting one because it allows us for the very first time in the organization to really create new monetization opportunities across any one of our owned and operated websites or third-party partners. And then box number 3 is our third-party integrations. Those are things such as our SMS gateway products that we've built, our email gateway services that we're working on rolling out, as well as a lot of our outbound telephony and whatnot that we can currently integrate with. So on those broad strokes, it's important to kind of, let's say, think about Engage in those kind of bigger building blocks. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on box number 1, and this is where I'm going to hand it over to Matt for a few minutes to give everyone a little bit of a sense of what is Engage and conceptualize and help you conceptualize the way we're thinking about our path forward as a company on the platform.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon, everybody. So for me, in explaining what Engage is and how it works, we really have to start and lift the hood and see what's kind of underneath it and how the data model or the data flow actually occurs through all these workflows, to and for between apps. So if you look at the screen currently that we have here, the main driver to anything is a campaign. It sits in the middle. You'll see it described as John Smith, Jane Doe, etc. Really leads coming in. So the campaign is what is the main element that's the driver in here. Now, composed of that, and everybody on this call will probably be able to tell you, in order to have an effective campaign, you need traffic, right? So traffic starts at the source level, which is represented all the way to the left. Once we have sources, we actually group those into channels, which is in between the two. That allows us to visualize different traffic streams, the effectiveness of those traffic streams for campaigns, as well as filter for segments, which I'll talk about in a second. And I apologize again, as Jonathan said, we're kind of limited on time, so I'm really giving you the Cliff Notes version here as well before we kind of open it up for questions and that kind of stuff. So once we have a campaign and we have traffic coming into a campaign, we make decisions based upon how we get that data to our traffic partner, to our advertisers, to our re-engagement modules, to our, let's say, third-party integrations, as Jonathan said, our email gateway, our SMS gateway. And in order to do that, we have to make a series of decisions. And those decisions are really the customer journeys, if you will, that a data will take through different workflows, which is the next element on the screen there. So as we set up workflows, we then can designate specific lines of where that campaign goes. For example, if we have a mortgage campaign, the mortgage campaign might have a main data sale component. That's one workflow. It also might have an SMS component to it. That's a separate workflow. And thirdly, it might have, let's say, a call campaign. That would be a third workflow. From there, we need to take action in that workflow. What are we going to do in that workflow? So we have a data sale, but what do we need to do with the data to actually prep it for the advertising, right? And there's things in the system, and one of the beauties of the system and one of the complexities of the system is that we can tailor, filter, and add attributes into our data at any point in the cycle. So if we decide at the source level we want to filter based upon email, is our email valid based upon a service that we have? Yes or no? If it's yes, take action. If it's no, disregard. And we can do that at any point in the system as business dictates or whatever use case dictates. So at this point, when we take actions based upon either a preset filter or within the workflow itself, we then decide how do we send or who do we send that data to, which would be the data clients. Data clients is all the way to the right. Think of those as your traditional advertisers. And from there, we'll configure how the data is transformed into the whatever system they have according to their API specs, right? Again, I apologize if I'm going a little quick. I know we're a little bit short in time. But at this point, that's kind of the overarching, data flow that happens underneath the hood for Engage. There's one final thing that I'll point before I kind of move on and show you what Engage is, and that's all the way at the bottom, and that's called segments. So what segments is really the audience building that Jonathan spoke about. So I can do cross-campaign or within a single campaign. I can designate data that is given a certain set of attributes into a certain segment. So for example, let's say, again, using our, let's say, mortgage campaign, our Simply Jobs campaign, let's even say a call campaign. We know certain bits of information of all that data that's coming into those three campaigns. Let's say, Fernando has a interest or creating an audience of those individuals that are over 45. I can create a filter on all those campaigns that puts all those individuals that are 45 into a segment. Once I have a segment, I then can take further action and create workflows upon that.
And before Matt gets into some demonstration of the actual platform itself, when you look at the complexity of that diagram that we had on the prior slide or the current slide, in today's world inside of DMS, what would traditionally happen is a marketer or a business user would typically have a need or a request. For instance, say Doc has a new advertiser and we want to hit that person on text initially with a message, and if the person clicks on the message, we then want to send the person an email a day later, and then we want to do a data post the following day if the person doesn't respond. Well, traditionally, this has been the challenge in our business, and this is one of the major drivers why we made this investment in Engage. Because that example that I just described to you traditionally would have come into the typical inbound processes into tech, and probably would have taken a couple of weeks at best to turn its way to come in and move back out into production. Then obviously we would have to tweak it and optimize it as we went along. Here's the beauty of Engage. The beauty of Engage is that process that would have taken a good week to 2 weeks at least, and probably hundreds upon, if not thousands of dollars to build, hoping that it would actually work and create revenue for the firm. The reality is in tomorrow's world, Doc could simply log into Engage and build that himself, point and click in just a few minutes. And that is really the power of what we've developed for the organization. It's that speed into revenue. It's the data and analytics that we have to essentially hunt at the right time, and essentially, as I've said before, in media buying, it's not always about knowing. It's not always about kind of like knowing where the fish are. It's about being where the fish are going to be going. And the power of the platform today will always allow us to be ahead of what our needs are in the organization, as dictated by marketing and business opportunities. So Matt's going to kind of step in now and do a little bit of walkthrough of the Engage platform. One thing I do want to preface before he walks through it is interface is obviously a very challenging concept. It's just as we were talking with the Philadelphia team yesterday, on Monday actually, the one concept in interface development is it's a constant, meaning that we're constantly developing, we're constantly getting feedback from our business users, our technical users, and obviously continuing to refine things. So what you see today probably will be very different from what you'll see in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, as we continue to enhance the usability of the platform, and obviously take on feedback from our various business partners in this project. So Matt, I'll hand it back over to you at this point.
Got it. So as you log into Engage, this would be, and what you see on the screen now, the first screen or view that you come into. And this is our main campaign screen. So from a top level, how much data for each of the campaigns have I received? As you can see, one of them at the top here, Campaign Avatar Citizens, has some filtration on it. And you can see that referenced by the 84 that were filtered. If you want to see what that filter is, you click in, and this is, again, going back to the diagram that you just saw on the data flow. We're starting in the middle at campaigns, and now we're interested in what's being filtered on the workflow, which is the first one to the right. So what I've done is click into a particular campaign, and now I'm looking at the next element in that flow diagram. From there, I'm going to see what filters are set up. And you can see there's a zip exclusion. So I'm interested in anything that equals these zips. Does everybody see that? Mm-hmm. Quick list all the way down. So that's where that filtration has come from. Again, it's a quick view that you can see exactly what's happening. Now, one of the screens that we just put in for the Forte team was something called a summary by source view. And what that is that's actually a slice on the data that will show the campaign grouped by the source, which is all the way to the left. This is important for their campaigns, as they can readily see where the traffic is coming from on each of their campaigns at the click of a button. One of the other things that Jonathan mentioned early on is our data dictionary. For me, in particular, this was actually very important, particularly with all the acquisitions we did, is we had, data structures and data models that were all over the place. And this commonality or normalization on the data is one of the key, at least for me, parts of Engage that I was very excited about, because I definitely felt the pain going from app to app, division to division. So if anybody comes into Engage, it's there for you to see all of the existing elements that we have for data. This allows people to construct those segments that we just talked about. And let me show you the segments for a sec. That would actually be here. So these are the current segments that we're actually using right now in Engage. You can see there's a Boston Metro that was for a particular SMS campaign. There's an education component, and that specifically was how many users on our job sites have indicated that they're interested in education. This is important, or one of the key metrics that the teams look for in terms of monetization. So we created a segment for that. Likewise, on the health vertical, we have Medicaid and Medicare. Those are ones that were important for driving a particular campaign in the health segment. So we set them up, segments in here, so they could track those things. And that's one of the main things, not only besides audience building, but it's actually a data retrieval or data research tool, going forward. Now, one of the things that Jonathan said as well is, as we expand the UI and we get into more big data analytics and lookup tools for everybody that empowers everybody, this will kind of, transform itself into being something that's even more of a macro nature. I think one of the last things I want to note, before I kind of, shut off and kind of have questions at this point, is one of the pain points I know on a couple of divisions was data client setup. The speed to getting new partners integrated with DMS, as well as duplication, right, between divisions. So let's say XYZ is an advertiser with Ray, with Best Rate, but he's also an advertiser for Forte as well. Well, here we're setting it up one time, across the board. And I want to show you just how easy it is as we have a main campaign screen, default price, if we have that. A config, most people will recognize this. How do we post the data? Where is it going? And the fields. Now, the beauty about the fields is it actually empowers the account executives if there needs to be a change. So let's say, for example, when we set it up, this primary email actually just needed to be email. It's literally a click of a button here and an update. And then it will transpose itself in real time. No need for text. Again, speed is of the essence right there. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to kind of follow up with a few things before we kind of take questions, but.
I do. We'll take questions in a quick second. You know, clearly, obviously, a quick 20, 30 minutes obviously is not enough time for us to really, let's say, pull everyone into a very thorough demonstration of the platform, as well as even getting you into a lot of the dashboard screens, which obviously are very telling. So we'll obviously be planning, as I said, quite a few series coming up, and we'll be working with the team up in Paramus to schedule those very quickly. We apologize for having to delay this, at least first initial discussion with the organization. Obviously, it was due to quite a few things like hurricanes and corporate moves and things of that extent. So we apologize for that slight delay, but we're going to be back out in a very quick period of time. I also wanted to note, and I talked to the team in Paramus about this yesterday, one of the things that we are going to be doing, and we'll be interested in people raising their hands across various areas of the organization. We're going to be basically creating power users as a part of our training process. They're essentially going to be called, Melissa actually came up with the term engagers. And so we kind of, let's say anointing engagers within the organization to become power users who will come down to Clearwater, work amongst the developmental teams and product teams specifically around Engage, become power users and super users so that as they return into their various functions in the business, all the organizations who will continuously get trained, at least we know that we have some fairly senior super users within each group. So we'll be looking obviously for people to come in and support that function. So we're obviously looking for people to raise their hand at some point. We had quite a few hands up in Philadelphia, which was great. So we'll hope to get a lot of hands in other areas of the business as well. I'll hand it over I'm gonna hand it over since we only have about 3 or 4 minutes left. I'll hand it back over to the Paramus team to shoot any questions over they might have already.
Sure. So that was a really. Is that any better? So we're actually going to. We only have time for probably about 1 or 2 of the questions. And you did talk a bit about the rollout. But I'm also curious about, as I'm looking at some of the questions that we've got here, what does this mean for those of us who have Salesforce accounts and things like that? What's the impact that Engage has on those platforms?
I think in terms of Salesforce, that's really a different animal. That's more sales pipeline, that kind of stuff. What we're talking about here is really as a user visits the site and goes through the site in terms of data and attributes, and then post-transaction, what am I actually doing with that customer journey?
Right. Salesforce will be used to essentially hunt our data clients and obviously people who are buying or selling into the platform. And I will say, kind of without going off on too much of a tangent, when you talk about things like Salesforce, you also talk about like our accounting, what does it mean for our accounting packages as an example. There will be different points of integration for some of these subsystems. Salesforce currently is not on our roadmap of integration points at this point in time. We'd obviously put things like our accounting packages up ahead of Salesforce a little bit at this time. So, right now Salesforce will remain as a CRM for obviously sales operations and development, business development.
Great. And then one last question. Is there a particular, in terms of the rollout, is there a particular division that you'll be rolling out first, or what's the plan of attack for that?
For us, it really isn't division specific per se. Down here in Clearwater, we work more closely, with particular projects like, mortgage and the Forte division and that kind of stuff, which is why we chose them first to kind of integrate with and use a lot of their use case scenarios. But definitely, each division represents, particular idiosyncrasies that we definitely would, welcome more conversation with, and how those idiosyncrasies actually map into Engage, whether it's this LMS that we just kind of previewed today, whether it's in Studio, whether it's in Media Toolkits, which is another kind of component of Engage that we haven't really spoken about here as well. But, across the corporation, each division will be at some point impacted here. It's just a matter of how, and again, that's where those power users or engagers kind of come into play.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank Jonathan and Matt for taking the time. I know that, like you said, you guys were just in Philly yesterday rolling it out. I know it was a much more thorough and in-depth presentation that was probably about 5 times the length of this Circle Up DMS webinar. So there's so much more to come. Everyone, please stay tuned, and we're looking forward to working with Jonathan and Matt on how we roll this out further company-wide and have everyone be an engager. So thanks again, Jonathan and Matt, and tune in next time for the next Circle Up. Thank you.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you.